And this next information is courtesy of Ben Carlson,
Hmm.
who wrote this book, Don't Fall for It, A Short History of Financial Scams. Okay. And in his book, there's a chapter on the railway bubble, basically of the 1800s.
Hmm.
Okay. And so this text that I'm about to sort of go through with you is his words. I didn't write this. I essentially copied this. The highlights are mine, Randy. If there's something highlighted, that's what I did.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So I'm not claiming any of this work as my own. This is Ben Carlson's work. Okay. So he's saying that the easiest historical analogies of the telecom build out in the 1990s, and the dot-com bubble and the railway bubbles of the 1800s. And he says that each period was defined by excessive infrastructure spending, investor euphoria, and bubbles that popped but still had lasting positive effects.
Hmm.
Right? The railway, dot-com, telecom bubbles all changed the world.
Yeah.
Right? Investors got super excited about it. You know, they were bubbles, but yet they weren't just, nothing, right? Weren't just castles in the sky.
Right.
And so some people are worried that we're seeing excessive infrastructure spending now, and that this, this is just another bubble. Okay. So he wrote this chapter in this book, and I'll just kind of read some of this with you. And he says, like most bubbles, the railway mania actually started out as a good idea that was taken too far by investors and those selling railway projects alike. Right. And he says the first commuter trains in the UK appeared during the 1820s, and they traveled 12 and a half miles per hour, which reduced the trip from London to Glasgow to 24 hours. And the Railway Times at the time said, what more could any reasonable man want? Right? A 24-hour trip from London to Glasgow.
Yeah.
But then in 1825, the mania started to hit with the opening of the first steam engine train.
Hmm.
An economic downturn snuffed out any speculation, and by 1840, shares of the main railway companies were selling at a discount to their issue price. And he's saying stocks acted more like bonds than stocks back then. But at that point, 2,000 miles of track were complete, leading some to speculate that the national railway system in Britain was already finished. Right? To me, this sounds a little bit like what we're going through with AI right now. We're building these AI data centers, and people are saying, is this enough? Have we overbuilt?
Right.
Right? And the clear answer to that is no. But then he says, memories are short when people think there's money to be made. So this first mini mania in railway stocks became a distant memory in the summer of 1842.
Hmm.
And that's when Prince Albert persuaded Queen Victoria to take her first train ride. So this was the all clear that investors needed to hop aboard the railway stock train. And by 1844, investors viewed these companies as safe and secure with huge upside potential, right? And so it didn't take long for that to morph into reckless euphoria.
Mhm.
Along comes a man by the name of George Hudson. And this guy is no Jensen Huang. Okay. So he was one of the, what they say is the original modern capitalists, using publicity, salesmanship, and a cult of personality to attract enormous amounts of capital and goodwill from the public. Okay. He was a shrewd businessman who knew how to persuade people. So he pounced on the opportunity by creating his own line of railways in the 1830s. And through a series of consolidations, mergers, schemes, bribes, acquisitions, and an uncanny ability to sell, he consolidated more power than anyone in the industry. And he eventually had the largest railway company in Britain.
Hmm.
By 1844, he oversaw 1/3 of the total tracks in operation, measuring over 1,000 miles in distance. Okay. Now, the problem was back then CEOs weren't paid a lot of money. And he became frustrated how little money he was making. So what's the solution, Randy? Well, you cut corners to increase wealth. Okay. So auditing back then was not a thing. So it allowed him to do basically whatever he wanted. So he did this by keeping his fellow directors and shareholders in the dark about the inner workings of his companies. This included a refusal to hold finance meetings, changing accounting methods, right? And just basically hiding, the financials. When he joined the board of one railway company in 1842, his first order of business was to announce an immediate change to the company's accounting methods, proclaiming, "I will have no statistics on my railway." So that's nice, right?
Yeah.
Start making up whatever you want. So by 1845, there were 500 new railway companies in existence.
Wow.
Okay. And the stock prices in the sector were up 500%. And of course, this guy did really well. He purchased a palatial estate. Entrance to Hyde Park was the largest private home in all of London. Right. His name became synonymous with success. Right. And so on. So the problem was, as an example here, there were literally plans for tracks that started nowhere and went nowhere with no stops along the way.
Sounds like California.
Yeah,
we have
there
a
you go.
railway like that.
California ahead of its time. The estimated cost of the nearly 1,200 railways under consideration were more than 560 million pounds. That was more than the national income of the entire country. Right? So we're not yet at that level with AI where we're spending more than the GDP of the US.
Right.
Not yet, but anyway.
Yeah.
Let's give it a couple of years. And he says the most mind-boggling aspect of all this money pouring in is it came from private investors. This wasn't the government investing in the infrastructure of their country, but investors who were looking to get rich.
Right.
Okay. So there were just 3 railway journals at the outset of the 1840s, led by the Railway Times. By the time the mania reached its zenith in 1845, there were 14 biweekly railway papers, 2 daily editions, and one was published every day, morning and evening. This is almost like the internet for the internet. Okay. So things progressed. He tried to get Charles Dickens as the editor of a new publication he called the Daily News. Dickens, I guess, to his credit, was a smart man. He said, I'm not a fan of Hudson, and supposedly remarked that he, Dickens, should be the last man in the world to be a supporter of it. So not everybody lost their heads, Randy. But here's how this worked. He said the schemes work like this. Newspaper ads would promise a 10% dividend for anyone who put money into a new railway project. If the project got funding enough, the directors would hold on to a large allocation of shares in the newly formed corporation. This created enough scarcity to push up the price from the flood of new investors, which thereby allowed the directors to flood the market with their shares by selling at a premium price. So he was the master of the scheme, promising unsustainable dividend yields of 50% to inflate the share prices on certain issues, which only encouraged more insider trading by himself and the company directors. These were blatant pump and dump schemes. So we now have obviously a lot of regulation and things around some of these things now. We now have auditing of financial statements, right? So
for instance, statistics.
A lot of the issues that we had back then, we shouldn't have today. Of course, we can still have financial fraud for a while.
Our financial looking the other way. I don't know. 2008 comes to mind.
Yeah. So the investing public didn't care. Parliament published a report in the summer of 1845 revealing the identity of 20,000 investors who had subscribed for at least £2,000, which would have been a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
Hudson's name was on there. There were 157 members of Parliament, almost 260 clergymen, and Charles Darwin. Darwin is said to have lost up to 60% in the aftermath of the mania, but that was actually better than most had fared in the bloodbath that followed. The rest were regular people, showing how broad the speculation was. Many investors were subscribed for more shares than they could ever hope to pay for, but the idea was they would all have the chance to sell at a premium before getting all of their capital called in to create the actual railway projects. Most people assumed the greater fool theory applied, but no one planned on being the last fool standing.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So anyway, by 1850, the amount invested was around 250 million pounds, almost half the GDP of Great Britain at the time. Okay. So there's an old saying that markets take the stairs up, but an elevator down, and railway stocks were no different. Rising interest rates were the first pinprick in the railway bubble in the summer of 1845. Bankruptcies hit an all-time high in 1846, just a year after the height of the mania. People from all walks of life and levels of wealth were ruined. By the start of 1850, railway share prices had fallen an astronomical 85% on average.
Mm.
Okay. Anyway, so Hudson then had a fall from grace,
Yeah, no kidding.
right? He was never prosecuted in a court of law because securities laws at the time didn't protect shareholders the way they do now.
Mm.
But he was tried and convicted in the court of public opinion
Mhm.
and ostracized by the elite class, which was, he's saying here, is a big blow to his gigantic ego. In the end, he was eventually arrested for not paying his debts, and he died broke years later.
Oh, wow.
So I guess he got what he was due,
Yeah.
right? Um, so, you think about the dot-com boom and bust, and it's interesting because Mark Andreessen is on record saying all those ideas are working today. I can't think of a single idea from that era that isn't working today in terms of the dot-com companies.
Yeah.
Right? I think of YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, now X, Google, all the things that came out. Maybe pets.com didn't survive,
Right.
but you can certainly buy any pet supplies you want to online.
Yeah.
Right? So it goes on here. It says the railway boom and bust had some positive outcomes as well. Not all was lost from this period of untamed speculation, greed, and accounting fraud. By 1855, there were over 8,000 miles of railroad track in operation, giving Britain the highest density of railroad tracks in the world, measuring 7 times the length of France or Germany. The railways set up during those years came to represent 90% of the total length of the current British railway system. People and businesses across the country experienced massive gains in efficiency through cheaper and faster transportation. And essentially what ended up happening was, tens of thousands of people from Ireland, for example, were provided employment throughout their famine years. And in many ways, this was a wealth transfer from the rich and middle class speculators to the labor class. Right. So not all was lost, I guess, in that regard.
Right.
Right. All right. We're almost done. So, the point that he's trying to make here is just in the middle paragraph. It took time for the combustion engine to completely replace the horse and carriage. The promises of the internet came true, but we had to live for the dot-com crash to get there. Right. And he makes the point that as car ownership first took off in the 1920s, there were 108 automakers in the US, and by the 1950s, were whittled down to the big 3. Right. The entire airline industry basically lost money or went out of business in the century after air travel was invented. So the suggestion here is that, this could be happening again with AI.
Yeah, I mean, you could even apply it in more specificity. You've got over 100 robot companies right now.
Yeah.
And even though there might be niches in the future, some of those robot companies aren't going to make it.
Yeah. And yet this is the process that we have to go through to find out who the best one is. That's just capitalism at its finest. Right. And the euphoria that you get about, robots, for example, is what attracts the capital that we need to develop the robots. And yet, yes, a lot of investors will lose their money. And I guess, is that such a bad thing? Or that sounds like a good process in that regard, right?
It sounds like a good process, and it really boils down to something we talk about on this channel all the time, and that is information arbitrage. So again, I talk about my business, my own experience, of course, because that's what I have to use as the basis of what I talk about. So I had over 400 clients as a marketing consultant in the last 20 years. Those 400 clients generally knew this much about their own business.
Yeah.
They might have known the skill set as an accountant that they needed to be an accountant. They might have known, if we're talking about bicycle shops, they knew how to repair a bicycle, or they knew enough about the bicycle to maybe try to convince somebody to buy one. But they usually knew nothing about the accounting. The accountant knew nothing about bicycles, but he didn't need to. I'm sorry. But that was just, anyway, but if a small business owner with all of that investment in his own business, his investment of time, money, his heart, his soul, his energies, or her energies, all of that's been invested, and yet they don't go to the trouble to understand their own business thoroughly from top to bottom, side to side. Well, the same thing's true when people are making these stock decisions. Are you going to put So we know how many people that have all of their money in Tesla right now. Other people probably
Yep.
have close to 100% in NVIDIA. Are you going to put all that money in without doing the homework, doing the work? And
Right.
that's what we do on this channel. We try to help people do the work, or at least point them in the right direction. And I think that's what happened in the .com bust, is that people didn't do any homework. Their cab driver told them, "Oh, did you hear about pet.com?" I'm sorry that pet.com has become, the
It's a good one. The
it's
sock puppet.
it's the one everybody uses, but in today's market, you can have the same thing. I mean, you're going to have some of the app makers, some of the people that come up with, applications, or whether it's an Optimus or a vehicle, or whether it is a app on your computer. There are going to be a lot of companies that come up with stupid ideas. The question is whether you're going to be stupid enough not to do the homework and put a lot of money behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you see some of the parallels, I guess, from, those past years, this example we just went through with today. We have auditing, and we have financial statements, and we have rules, and we have regulations, but there's still a lot of things that are a bit opaque.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things for Tesla, for example, was safety data for FSD.
Right.
Not to take us off track, but there are some things out there where people point to.
You didn't just say that, off track.
I
After
did.
you just spent, okay.
Pun intended.
You go back. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, the thing today, though, is that we're also focused on the narrative, right? And the narrative is such a powerful thing, and it certainly was back then too.
Sure.
Right.
The future is here. The singularity is coming. Grab your copy today, available now on Amazon in Kindle, print, or Audible. Unlock the future one page at a time. What will you build tomorrow?